Hi, I'm back. This is actually segment 6. I'm not sure uh, how somehow the camera broke what I thought was a segment into two. So this is actually 6. But as long as you're following the numbers, you should be okay. I am probably going to have to do interdependence theory in person. It's really complex, but it is really, really a cool theory. And actually, I think I've shared with you that I counsel people online, um, with relationship issues. And this is one that I usually discuss with them when we're chatting. And I ask them to look at their personal relationship according to this theory because I'm a champion of it. It's very complex, but it makes so much sense, and it's been shown over and over again repeatedly in studies to be effective in terms of predicting relational outcomes. In other words, predicting what's going to happen with the relationship. Okay, so I will save that for in person, as well as some of the other things out of chapter 7 and 8. We'll go through in person on Thursday. Okay. But for now, let's look at equity theory. Equity theory is the last two slides. This is a social exchange theory, meaning, once again, social exchange means that you look at your relationship in terms of like a business, profits. Are you coming out ahead at the end of the year, or are you spending more than what your company is making? If you're spending more than what your company is making, your company is not going to last. You're not going to be in business much longer. And it's sort of the same thing. According to this theory, according to this set of theories, social exchange, it's an exchange. You look at the profit, so to speak, or rewards of your relationship, and you look at what it's costing you, time, money, energy, whatever it's costing you, and is it really worth it, basically. There are several dozen social exchange theories because each one sort of takes some different qualities, aspects, or characteristics of communication, whether it's attraction, whether it's disclosure, self-disclosure, like we already talked about with social penetration theory, etc., etc. Well, Hatfield kind of comes up with this, or she came up with this model of equity. Let me explain equity first before we even talk about what the actual theory says. Equity is not being equal. Even though when you're looking at the PowerPoint, you're going to see equal signs, just like an equation in algebra. If you remember, in algebra, when you see the equal sign, both sides have to be equal. That's what equal means. Okay, they're exactly the same. And so that's how we solve for x and y, whether it's quadratic equations or whether it's just simple algebraic equations. We solve for x and figure out what it is, and knowing that both sides have to equal helps us to do that, right? In essence, the equal sign in this particular theory, even though equal means equal, it actually means equity, okay, which is not exactly the same thing. Okay, equal, people talk about having an equal partnership in their relationship or friendship. Again, we want to try to focus on friendship in light of the movie. And it's the same sort of thing because let's say you're friends with somebody and you both sort of make comparable amounts of money. It's not like one person is a billionaire and can afford to buy lunch and dinner, and cars for you and everything else. Okay, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the idea of two people pretty much same income level, what have you. But let's say one person always pays for lunch. I don't think after a while the person who's always paying lunch is going to want to keep doing that. Even if the other person isn't as good managing his or her money, that's not equitable, right? We wouldn't consider that very fair. All right, but let's look in terms of more things like that in terms of equity. Basically, equity says, or this theory of equity says that your output ratio versus your input ratio needs to equal the other person's output ratio over input. Okay, I know that just probably blew everybody out of the water because you're not used to that. Certainly not used to thinking in terms of math in relationships. But guess what? I'm a statistician. I love fractions and I love percentages and I love math. So I really, really love this theory. Let's think of outputs and inputs. Just as this big umbrella of social exchange says, the rewards versus the costs, business, friendships, or relationships, okay, in order to be satisfied, we've got to have more rewards than we do costs. We might stick in the relationship for all the wrong reasons, but we're not going to be satisfied. We're just not. Okay, so equity theory says that we need to have a distribution of output versus input ratios. Notice I'm talking in terms of ratios being equal. And what this is saying is, in a nutshell, the underlying thing is one person may seem like they're doing more work in terms of the relationship. Here's an example. I know a couple, and I don't want to say that the woman, the wife, is lazy. I should say they're friends of the family. I don't know them as well as I used to growing up, but from what I know growing up, let's just say that the wife seems to be a little lazy. Her husband has a pretty decent job. I think he's probably ready to retire now. He's done very well, managed his money well, so they're going to have a good retirement. While their children, who are around my age, actually I think they were older. But anyway, yeah, they're definitely older. But anyway, while they were growing up, they were involved in different activities, soccer, I think, and whatever else. Soccer, one played lacrosse, and I forget, just different stuff. The dad worked 60 hours a week. He was something in finances, some type of financial advisor, stockbroker maybe, but definitely some sort of financial planner. He arranged his schedule so that he was able to be at just about every one of his kids' soccer games and whatever other. I think the girl played piano and had piano recitals and stuff like that. He was always there. Now, his wife, I believe she was there also, but she didn't work outside the home, and they had a housekeeper and at least a part-time nanny or somebody to help care for the kids, or maybe it was the same person who did the housework and helped care for the kids, because he was successful financially and they were able to afford that. Okay, so the whole idea, again, he did a lot more work. But he got to reap benefits too because he had a really good job and he put in a lot of hours. It was flexible. He was able to see his kids. Um, Traditionally, certainly 30, 40, how many ever years ago, when more moms stayed home and only worked maybe part time or so outside the home, dads were really the ones who were the breadwinners, and they didn't get to go to a lot of their kids' sporting games or things. It was always mom, right? And the term soccer mom still prevails today. Okay, and that's just how it was. It was just distributed differently. And even then, we could say that maybe the dad did more outside work, paying the bills and everything else, but maybe the mom was doing more of the inside work, doing the housekeeping, doing the wash, the cooking the meals, taking the kids to school, their activities, and so forth. Okay, so they had different roles. But again, let's go back to this couple that I'm talking about here, where the husband, at least from my perspective, absolutely put a lot more into their marriage in terms of help raising the kids and working to pay the bills and being there to support them emotionally, etc., etc. And at least on the surface, to me, the wife didn't seem like that. And yet the couple seemed happy, or at least he seemed happy. And one might think, wow, he's doing a lot more. Okay, but we're going to go back to this idea of ratio, because even though he's inputting, he's doing so much work in the relationship, evidently he's getting an awful lot out, or the outputs. Okay, he's getting a lot more out of it too than what she is, because again, he's getting to spend time with his kids, and he has the satisfaction of being the breadwinner, and he is emotionally there for everybody, etc., etc. Whereas she's not putting much into the relationship, but apparently her expectations weren't that much, so her inputs weren't that much, and so they were equitable. In other words, if you look at the very last slide there, where I have like 9 over 3 equals 3 over 1, this is a perfect illustration of what I'm saying. Let's say the husband is the 9 over 3. That would mean, oh my gosh, he's doing all this. He's paying the bills. He's taking the kids to their activities. He's taking them to their dental appointments. He's getting the car fixed. He's getting the oil man to come fill the oil and everything. He's doing all of this stuff. So we're giving him like a 9, basically, like, I don't know, 9 major things that he's doing, that he's responsible for. Let's say his rewards are just a number 3. I know it's hard to assign a number like this, but you just kind of have to think outside the box. He's getting more out of it than if you look at her, because her lower number is 1, right? Or I'm sorry, he's getting more out of it, even though he's putting more into it. I guess I had that reversed. The 3, like he's doing 3 things, but he's getting so much more out of it because he really enjoys spending time with his family, and he enjoys his work, and he enjoys all these things. So we're going to give him a 9 over 3. If you reduce that fraction, you get 3 over 1, which is why we have the equal sign. Even though it's not equal in the sense that she's not really doing much of anything. We're only giving her a 1. We're only giving her a 1 because she's there. She's not cooking. She's not cleaning. She's not the one driving the kids to school. The nanny is. She's not the one making the meals. The nanny is. But she's not getting as much out of it either, because she's not participating as much with her children. And, she's not emotionally as connected to her children. So we're only giving her a 3 as far as her outputs or satisfaction. Which is still good, because 3 is over 1, as long as outputs are greater than the inputs. If it were 1 over 3, And if, let's say, the fellow, if it was 3/9, that would mean that he's doing a lot more work and not getting as much out of it. And, we would say the relationship is equitable. We would say the relationship is also equitable if it were 1/3 and she's doing like 3 basic things and only getting 1 out of it. I know this is so complex to talk about on a video, but just try to imagine, if you can, this scenario of applying numbers to the relationship. Because again, we're talking about equity. We're not saying they're equal. Oh my gosh, in this couple that, like I said, I knew growing up, things absolutely did not seem equal to me at all. It just seemed like he did everything and she did nothing. And I know that's probably not true. But I think what is true is he did a heck of a lot more than what she did. They're not divorced till this day. They go on cruises together. Don't know if either one's having an affair. I've never heard of either one. And they actually do seem happy. When I usually see them around the holidays, because they're good friends of my parents, they still seem happy after all these years. So we would say that relationship is probably equitable, not equal, because they don't have equal roles or responsibilities. But again, Hatfield says that doesn't have to happen to have people be satisfied. What has to happen is the distribution of outputs, the rewards, what you're getting out of it versus what you're putting into it. Basically, the grunt work, if you want to say that. Cooking, cleaning, washing, taking kids here and there, paying bills, working outside the home, fixing the car. All of those, managing the money, mowing the grass, anything and everything that you can think of that goes into, a romantic relationship of sorts. If it truly is a ratio of getting more rewards or outputs than inputs, and if the ratio is equal in the sense of maybe the other person does a lot more but is getting a lot more out of it, as long as the two fractions are equal, we say the relationship is equitable. Now, what happens, because most relationships aren't equitable. Okay, so you have to understand a couple of terms. So let's go back to the next to last slide. Over-benefited versus under-benefited. Okay, I have been trying to concentrate on relationships that are equitable. But what happens when you try to balance the sides of the equation and they don't balance? Okay, so let's imagine that 9/3. Let's flip that and make that 3/9. Okay, meaning, again, we're going to talk about this fellow, this couple, friends of my family. He's putting 9. I mean, he's doing so much for the relationship, and he's only getting like a 3 out of it. He's not getting a whole lot out of it. Maybe he's not getting the intimacy he wants. Maybe he is stressed because he has to do all the work outside the home, and then he has to come home and do all the work around the house and pay the bills and manage the money and get the kids to their dental appointments and all of that. And so maybe for him, his fraction is a 3/9, 9 being the inputs or what he's putting in, the work, and 3 being the rewards. But let's say for her, she has a 3/1, because let's say she basically can sit on her butt and do nothing, and maybe what she does is show up to all her kids' sporting, musical, dance, whatever, performances. She's there. But she doesn't take the kids to practice. She doesn't do the laundry. She doesn't do the cooking. She doesn't do the cleaning. She doesn't work outside the home. She doesn't cut the grass. She doesn't paint the fence. She doesn't walk the dog. etc., etc., etc. So she shops. So let's say her satisfaction is a 3/1, maybe it's even a 5/1, because she's doing very, very little to contribute to the relationship. But man, she's got access to credit cards.